It is one of the most influential books ever written, and also one of the most hated. For 500 years, it has been banned, burned, quoted by tyrants, and studied by everyone who has ever wanted to understand power. Its author's name became an insult. To call someone Machiavellian is to call them ruthless and scheming. And yet, people keep reading it, because hidden inside its cold reputation is something rare. The truth about how power actually works, written by a man who had nothing left to lose. In the next 12 minutes, you'll understand The Prince, what it really says, how it's built, and why it refuses to die. No philosophy degree required. Let's start with the man, because you cannot understand the book without understanding his fall. Niccolò Machiavelli was not a prince or a king. He was a senior official in the Republic of Florence, a diplomat who spent 14 years in the rooms where power was made and broken. He met popes, kings, and warlords face to face. He watched them scheme, win, and lose. Then, in 1512, the Republic collapsed. The Medici family returned to power, and Machiavelli lost everything. He was dismissed from office, accused of conspiracy, arrested, and tortured. Finally, he was released and exiled to a small farm outside the city. And it was there, in disgrace, that he wrote The Prince. In a famous letter, he described his evenings, stripping off his muddy work clothes, putting on robes fit for a royal court, and entering his study to converse with the great rulers of the past. Out of that exile came a short book, barely 100 pages, addressed to Lorenzo de' Medici, the very family that had ruined him. Why? Partly to win back a job, but also because he genuinely believed he had learned something no one else was willing to say out loud. Here is the idea that makes the whole book revolutionary. Before Machiavelli, books advising rulers told them how a good prince should behave. Be virtuous, be just, be merciful, and God will reward you. They described the world as it ought to be. Machiavelli threw that out. He wrote that he would describe the truth of the matter as facts show it, rather than any fanciful notion. In his own words, "For how we live is so far removed from how we ought to live, that he who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn to bring about his own ruin than his preservation." Read that twice, because it's the engine of everything that follows. He's saying, a leader who acts the way idealists say he should, in a world full of people who don't, will be destroyed. So this book will not tell you how to be good. It will tell you how to survive and hold power among real human beings, who are, in Machiavelli's blunt assessment, frequently selfish, fearful, and unreliable. This is the birth of political realism, judging actions by their results, not by their intention. Now let's look at how the book is actually built, because The Prince has a clear structure once you see it. It moves through 4 big questions. The first part asks, what kinds of states are there, and how do you take them? Machiavelli classifies principalities, those you inherit, those you conquer, those you win through luck, and those you win through your own skill. His key insight here is that inherited power is easy to keep, but power you seize yourself is fragile and must be secured fast. He uses real examples from his own lifetime, especially Cesare Borgia, a ruthless warlord he both admired and studied, as a case study in seizing and consolidating power quickly. The second part asks, what holds a state together? And his answer is blunt: armies. Specifically, your own armies. Machiavelli spends several chapters attacking the use of mercenaries, hired soldiers who fight for money. He wrote that mercenaries and auxiliaries are useless and dangerous, because men who fight only for pay have no reason to stand and die when things get hard. A ruler who depends on borrowed force, he warns, never stands firm or sure. The deeper principle reaches far beyond armies. Never build your power on strength that isn't truly your own. The third and most famous part asks the real question of the book. How should a prince actually behave to keep his power? This is where the lines everyone quotes come from, and it's where Machiavelli earns both his fame and his infamy. Let's walk through the core theses, because these 5 ideas are the heart of the whole book. Thesis 1. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Machiavelli argued that love is unreliable. People break the bonds of affection the moment it costs them something, while fear, the certainty of consequence, holds steady. But he added a crucial limit that most people forget. A leader must be feared in a way that never becomes hated, by never stealing his people's property or dignity. Thesis 2. The Fox and the Lion. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must learn to use both the beast and the man, and among beasts must imitate both the fox and the lion. The lion cannot defend himself against snares, and the fox cannot defend himself against wolves. The lion is raw force, the fox is cunning. A leader needs both, strength to face open threats, and shrewdness to detect hidden traps. Pure force is blind, and pure cleverness is weak. Thesis 3. Appearance matters more than reality. This is one of his sharpest observations. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few touch what you are." A prince, he argued, doesn't strictly need to be merciful, honest, and faithful, but he absolutely must appear to be. Reputation is a tool, and most people judge by the surface because the surface is all they ever see. Thesis 4. Virtù and Fortuna. These two Italian words run through the whole book. Fortuna is luck, the chaos and chance outside your control. Virtù is skill, courage, and decisive action, the part that's yours. Machiavelli compared fortune to a flooding river that destroys everything in its path, but argued that a wise person builds defenses in advance, so the flood, when it comes, does less damage. He estimated that fortune controls about half of what happens to us, and leaves the other half to us. Thesis 5, and this is the one most often twisted, the ends and the means. Machiavelli is popularly summarized as saying, "The ends justify the means." He never actually wrote that sentence. What he argued is more specific. A ruler will be judged by results, and in the brutal arena of power, a leader who keeps the state secure and stable will be forgiven the hard methods it took to get there. He wrote that in the actions of men, the end is looked to. People judge the outcome. It's a grim observation about how the world rewards success, not a cheerful license to do anything. The fourth and final part of the book turns to Italy itself. Machiavelli ends not with cold strategy, but with raw emotion, a passionate plea for a strong leader to unite Italy and drive out the foreign armies that had been invading and humiliating it for decades. This ending surprises people. The man accused of being heartless closes his book as a wounded patriot, begging for someone to save his broken country. It's a reminder that the whole cold-blooded analysis had a purpose behind it, a stable, free Italy. So that's the book. Now the real question, why do people still read it 500 years later, when the world of warring Italian city-states is long gone? Because The Prince isn't really about the 16th century. It's about human nature, and human nature hasn't changed. The specifics are dated, the patterns are permanent. Strip away the princes and the armies, and you're left with timeless questions. How do you lead people who won't always cooperate? When is it right to be tough instead of kind? How much of success is luck, and how much is skill? How do you tell the difference between someone's image and their real character? These questions show up in every boardroom, every team, every negotiation, every relationship. That's why the book is read today, not just by historians, but by executives, founders, military officers, and anyone trying to understand how influence really moves. Some read it as a warning, a map of the dark tactics people use so they can defend against them. Others read it as honest realism about a world that doesn't always reward the naive. Either way, its power is the same. Machiavelli refuses to lie to you about how people behave when something is at stake, and here is the deepest reason it endures. Machiavelli gave us permission to look at uncomfortable truths without flinching. Most advice tells you how things should be. He insisted on showing you how they are. You don't have to agree with his conclusions. Many people find parts of the book genuinely chilling. But you cannot read it honestly without seeing the world a little more clearly afterward. That clarity, even when it's unsettling, is exactly what keeps drawing each new generation back to a 100-page book written by an exiled official on a farm outside Florence. It's worth pausing on that fearsome reputation because it tells you something. Within decades of his death, the Catholic Church placed the prince on its list of banned books. His name was turned into a byword for evil. Elizabethan playwrights even nicknamed the devil Old Nick after Niccolò. For centuries, admitting you'd read him was almost a confession. And yet the powerful kept reading anyway, often in secret. Kings, cardinals, and statesmen condemned the book in public and studied it in private. That gap between what people said about Machiavelli and what they actually did with him is almost a Machiavellian lesson in itself. The book was too useful to obey the ban, and you can test its usefulness yourself, today, without any power at all. The next time you watch a negotiation, an office promotion, an election, or even a tense family decision, try reading it through Machiavelli's eyes. Who's relying on being liked, and who's relying on being respected? Who's the lion, and who's the fox? What's appearance, and what's the reality underneath it? How much was skill, and how much was luck? You'll be surprised how often the 500-year-old framework explains the room better than anything modern does. So, if you've ever felt that the world doesn't quite work the way you were told it should, that good intentions aren't always enough, that power follows rules nobody says out loud, then The Prince is the book that finally says them out loud. That's why it survived 5 centuries of being banned and burned. Not because it's evil, but because it's honest. This was the overview. If you want to go deeper, we've broken down the biggest ideas one by one. Feared versus loved, and what it means for real leadership. Fortune versus skill, and what you actually control. And how to spot the manipulation tactics Machiavelli described being used on you every day. Watch those next, and subscribe to Above Average for more timeless wisdom that helps you see the world as it really is. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.